Greetings, Inquisitors. Welcome to the holocron. Today I want to dive into the new raid system, try to talk about where we're at and what this is doing to us as players. There's a lot of negativity around this. People seem to think that we're getting ripped off, so let's skip all the negativity and just dive right into finding some kind of system to quantify how things really are with the new raid system. Then from that, we'll determine whether or not we as players deserve some kind of compensation or remediation. I'll talk about my expected guilds, my expectations on how guilds are going to react to all this stuff. And then at the end, we'll talk about some facts and some data and try to think about what this might mean for your account and for account building. So let's get into it. And as we do, please remember to hit that like button. It always, YouTubers always ask for that, but it does help us out. So if you like this kind of content, please do click that. Help me out. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, we have to find a way to break down everything that we used to have, things that we used to get for all the raids as many times as we got them per week. And we're going to have to convert all that to crystals. Once we have a consistent currency type, then we can take a look at them in the same way. So we're going to do that for the old raids. We're going to do that for the new raid as well, and then convert it all in the same way and compare them on a consistent basis. To convert everything to crystals, just as an example, you can go into the shop and buy 1120 crystals to buy credits. And I'm going to assume that we average about 2 million credits received for that purchase. Again, I haven't gone through statistically and figured out exactly, what the average is on this, but I have to make some assumptions somewhere. So that's how we get the value of crystals. Converting gear using mid-range gear costs. If I use a stun cuff, for example, we can spend 700 crystals to get 50 shards, stun guns, carbantes, things like that. So that's what we're going to use as the value of this mid-game purple gear that we use for gear 12, stuff like that. Converting guild event token 1 and 2 the same way. We're going to look at what can be bought with that and then convert it to crystals. So without getting into all the details, that just gives you an idea of what I mean by converting everything to crystals. I can't know everything for rewards. It's not consistently the same on these systems, so I use some averages. I did use a higher placement, assuming around 10th place for the rewards, and that does skew this assessment towards somebody who's participating and competing for higher placement. And the reason I did that is because if I did it for a lower place, then somebody who's in a higher place is going to be missing out more than what I would be representing. So I want to represent, most people will be here or less, and then we can get a better picture of it. Of course, the pit and the heroic AAT are set to sim. And then I did assume participation fully at 600 tickets for 50 members for all of these studies. And again, it's relevant because with the new raid system, 90,000 to launch a raid. That means one raid every 3 days, as long as everybody does their part and gets 600 tickets. So we're going to do that to represent a competitive mid-game guild where people are expected to get all their tickets. Otherwise, it gets a little too complicated, so I got to have a baseline somewhere. So we started out, we took what we had on all the old raids, guild tokens, credits, ship credits, shards of characters, all that stuff. I'm not going to go through all the detail, but we ended up with 3 basic categories. Converting gear to crystals, converting credits to crystals using the method that I showed before, and then all of the other stuff, the get 1, the get 2, the shards, and you'll see that it balloons up to quite a large value for the C pit, and that's because you get the arrow magnifiers out of there, and the arrow magnifiers are really worth a lot of crystals, so that balloons up the cost or the value on that raid output. Now, for those of us who have been in the C pit for a long time, the Loquitur account, the guild was doing the C pit routinely for a long time, so I have tons of arrow magnifiers. So in the grand scheme of things, this currency didn't really represent a reward that I could make use of. But still, it's for, especially for people who don't have that and they're looking to relocate characters, it's a very valuable resource. So this gives you an idea, again, of what we get for the gear credits for each time that we do each of these raids. And then we have to upgrade that because we can run these raids multiple times per week, depending on how many tickets we get, like I said. So when we plug in the amount of times we can run each week, here's what we come up with for a conversion. And the final total, we get 16,355 crystals worth of value for all of the stuff that we get out of all of the raids that we can do in a week at a good competitive level. Now, if anybody's gone into the crystal shop to buy crystals, this is slightly above what it costs for $100 worth of crystals. So think about that to put it in perspective. These raids in the old system were basically giving us $100 worth of resources every week. That's a pretty good deal, right? We don't want to lose out on that. All right, so let's do the comparison for the new system. And in order to do that, we have to make the same kind of conversion for the currency in the new system. So I listed it as the Krayt token one. It's just the raid token one, but it's the idea of, the new Krayt raid sort of being the flagship of the change. So in this system, the tier 1 token, we can look at a Carbanti here, 700 crystals for 50 Carbantis. We can look at a cost of 220 tokens for 10 and come up with a conversion, 700 crystals per 100 or 1100 of the new tokens, which gives it a value of 0.64 per token. For the level 2 tokens, we can look at something in the shop. Mark 12 detonator for 875 for 25. We can convert that. Looking at the same piece, 335 out of the shop for the tier 2 currency there, which gives us a ratio 875 crystals is worth 1650 of the tier 2 currency, giving the tier 2 currency a value of 0.52. It's interesting to me that the tier 1 currency actually has a better conversion rate than the tier 2 currency. But certainly with the tier 2 currency, if we're able to buy these pieces that we need for relicking characters, that's a pretty good deal. And I do think that this is where you're going to spend the majority of your money, right? Majority of these resources on this type of, gear 12 gear for the tier 1 stuff, making gear 13 with the tier 2 stuff. And then tier 3, I assumed that we'd be using that to make higher relic characters. And so we're going to use this arrow magnifier as the conversion rate on the tier 3. And you can see that 2 of them cost 400, 10 of them cost 2,500 crystals. So here we get 2,500 crystals per 2,000 tier 3 currency, giving it a valuation of 1.25 crystals per tier 3 currency. So in the same way that we converted all the old raid stuff to crystals, now we have a method to convert all the new stuff to crystals. So if we look at the Sith raid, we can run the Sith raid every 3 days. There's a 24-hour lead-in period, a 2-day runtime. And each time that we run it, we get 8475 token 1, 4,000 token 2, and 10 Treya shards that I didn't calculate in here. Whoops. So 10 more shards on top of that. That's worth, a little bit more. And the value of those is 7504 crystals for every run that we do, and we can do a run every 3 days. So that gives us a total of 17,509 crystals worth of value out of the Sith raid on the new system. So for those who like math, the old system, 16,335 all in for all 4 raid systems, everything we could do in a week. New raid system, 17,509. So did we get swindled? Well, the old is less than the new, so I don't think we got swindled. All right, so let's look at the Krayt raid then. I know this is going to be a little small for people watching this video, but suffice to say what I've done here is I've divided out by the guild reward tiers, 26, 73, 94, 130 on up. And for the personal contribution on each one of those tiers, I assumed that basically what I said is some people will participate more and some people will participate less. I want to be in the top, 10 or 15 of the people contributing, maybe let's say top 20. So what I did is I said, let's assume that if there's 50 people in a guild and I want to be, let's say, at a higher rate than that. So in converting out these numbers, I looked at being in the top half at least. So estimating that the top half would perform in a certain way and the bottom half would perform in a certain way and kind of meet in the middle. Then we look at our contribution, and I rounded it to the nearest tier for the personal contribution. Then we can put together a guild contribution and a personal contribution. So where you see that the personal contribution isn't simply the guild contribution divided by 50, that's because I do want to push us higher in the personal contribution. Because let's be honest, not everybody in the guild will participate at the same level. And if you're not willing to commit to a higher level of participation, then probably the guild won't achieve that score. So if anybody disagrees with me, that's fine, but that's how I did the calculation. So that gives us a personal tier. We can calculate out all of the things that we would get on the personal track, as well as all the things we would get through the guild track. And then we do the same thing. We run the Krayt raid every 3 days. It doesn't have the 24-hour lead-in period, so we can run that the same amount as the Sith raid. We multiply that out, and the relevant numbers down here at the bottom, 16,355 is the old system, 17,509 is the Sith raid. And we can see that already at the 94 million level, that box, even though we don't get any of the token 3, we're at 16,059, which puts us at 91% of the Sith raid, and close to the system, the old system, all in, everything that we got. So anything over that 94 million contribution is better than the old system, and anything over 17,509 is better than the Sith raid, which means that at 130 guild box, assuming a good personal contribution to that as well, we've exceeded both the Sith raid as well as the old system in total value of currency. And by the time we get to 234, it's better, and it goes up from there. So again, 94 million getting 92% of the Sith raid is nice, because that means that if the guild is working on the Krayt raid and they try for the 130 and they miss, they still get the 94, people still get a good personal track, and you'll get almost as much as you would have from the Sith raid anyway, plus, potentially some token 3 from the personal path. So that's a reason for guilds, once they think they can get close to 130, definitely to have switched over. 130 guild participation is 12% above the Sith raid, assuming that you're making a good personal contribution. It's not that many token 3, but it's at least some. 234 gets you more of the token 3, and it's 33% above the Sith raid. 265 seems to me to be improperly placed. If I look at the rewards at 49% above the Sith raid, I feel like this should be somewhere around 320. So if your guild can do 234, you really should push for the 265, or maybe they'll fix that at some point in the future. Who knows? Or maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it's just wrong. But anyway, it seems like too good of a reward at that landmark, but that makes it even more efficient. At the very top end of it, for a guild that could actually score the 520 million, that would be 83% more than the value of the Sith raid, almost double, which is massive. But yeah, it's not really easy to get there. One of the complaints that, of course, I've been hearing is that you don't get credits. And I didn't realize this at first, but you can actually just buy the credits. You can buy them straight out of the shop for the token 1. And the cost is efficient. The price is about half of what it would cost to buy with crystals. And based on the conversion rate of these, it's really a good deal. Credits are really a good deal. Very cost efficient out of the shop. Now, I guess the reason I didn't notice, because I looked through that shop a few times and they weren't there, but the credits are random. They don't show up every time in every shop. So sometimes you will see them and sometimes you won't. But they're there to be bought. So if you say, well, I lost all these credits, okay, well, you just have to use part of your winnings to get them back. And remember, you're getting 8,400 of these every 3 days at 625 for $1 million. If you spent it all, you'd be looking at what, like 12 or 13 million credits worth of conversion just out of one raid, if that's the only thing you ever spent it on. So we can get those back. Now, the credits aren't in the shop every time. They don't always show up as a 1 million purchase. I saw a 500,000 purchase, and maybe there's other values. Maybe it's just 1.5 million. I don't know for sure. I haven't seen enough examples. But anyway, I think, if you check the shop enough and you have enough currency, we used to get like 4.4 million credits in total out of all the raid systems across the week. So buying back 5 million per week is 5 purchases out of the shop. So it will burn up some of your currency if you really need the credits, but it's okay. In the grand scheme of things, the credits are there and available if you go look for them. Pros and cons. The new Sith raid provides compensation that's better than our total payout across all raids before. It's different. It looks different. It feels different. We've lost some of the little trinket stuff, the fleet currency. Yeah, it's gone. But it is balanced out by what you can buy with the tokens that you get from the raid. You don't get the participation currency, those guild event participation things that you buy characters with. So it will be harder in the very early game to buy multiple characters out of that shop. But if you're only focused on one character, you can use all of your guild participation currency and make sure that you just save that. Don't use it on anything except characters. And it should be okay-ish. Again, I don't know exactly how much we're going to get per week because I haven't done the calculation and backtracked out the raids and all that stuff. But it's definitely going to be harder. It'll take longer to build a character out of that shop. And you'll have to buy no other things. Okay? It's a bit of a setback. But again, it just means that it's not that we get less. We're just getting it in a different way. And while it's going to cost us the ability to buy those characters as quickly, it's also going to pay back with other gear. Han, General Kenobi, and Traya are now super easy. With each raid, if you get 84.75 of the token 1, you can make 12 purchases per Sith raid completed. So you only need 3 raids to complete one of these characters. You can complete a character every 9 days. And if you need all 3 of those characters, you can complete them within a month. If you've got a guild that just maxes out tickets and does the right amount of Sith raids every week. So that's exceptional. I mean, being able to grab these characters up and not have to wait on them, over a long time to get enough raids done is nice. And then once you've got them, you don't ever have to spend that currency there again. Now, you don't get shards for the shard shop, but again, you were getting shards for the shard shop, using them to buy gear out of the shard shop. Now you'll just use the token 1 and token 2 to buy gear. So it's different, but it's still there. So overall, you're going to be able to get more materials for relic building. You'll get more of the token 1 to help you get to gear 12. The token 2 will help you relic put gear characters to gear 13. And if you get the token 3, that's what you need for the more higher relic characters. Getting things to relic 7 and 8 easier. The Zimbital cards, the arrow magnifiers, the impulse detectors are well priced out of that shop. So those T3 tokens can help out in that regard. The cons are, if a guild really wants to outperform the Sith raid and to get tier 3 tokens without a loss in compensation, you really have to have the whole guild contributing. It can't be that some people do it and carry the rest. Really, everybody has to pitch in. Now, the loss of credits, get 1 shards, it's compensated. It's back in there. As a con, it's not what we're used to. It's coming in a different way. But in a pro, you could say, well, you've got more choice to what you're going to buy and where you use it. I mean, before, if you got a full Mark V detonator, you'll use it someday. But maybe that's not really what you needed today. And with the new system, you can buy what you need today and then buy something else tomorrow. So it's more choice. It's loss of what we're used to. But in my calculations, unless my math is wrong, it looks fair. Okay, now, is it worth pushing for Krayt? So let's take this 130 landmark and say our contribution rate, if we're going to do the 130, we want to be able to hit 3.5 million, at least the 3.4 million rate on the personal track. So if we look at how's that going to work? A Relic 5 team can only contribute 1.2 million. A Relic 7 team can contribute 1.8, and a Relic 9 team can contribute a Relic 8 team can contribute 2.7, a Relic 7 team can do 1.8, and a Relic 5 team can do 1.2. So let's say we've got two teams at 1.2. We've got some kind of Hut Cartel team and some kind of Mando team. And let's say that we get the timing down and we get these teams tweaked. And at Relic 5, we can max out the contribution. That gets us 2.4. That's still a long way off from that 3.4 that we need to hit for our personal. So we're going to need some kind of Old Republic team in there. Maybe we've got, less contribution out of that. Let's call it under 1 million. And then you'd still need like some kind of just Tuskens and Jawas, some kind of really leftover team that you still get in there and score something with to all add up to 3.4 million. So this is no joke. If your guild wants to go for the 130 rate, you have to have two teams maxing out their contribution at Relic 5, or you got to be willing to commit to R7 to get to that 1.8 contribution, or Relic 8 to get to the 2.7. And honestly, the 2.7, again, I haven't seen everything, and I know that the Beskar Mando lead is broken right now. They intend to fix that, but it looks like, from what I've seen, if you want to max out a team at 2.7, probably the Jabba team is what you want to invest in. It's hard to imagine that you're going to want to go full Relic 8 on a Maul Mando team just for the raid. Some people will probably have to do it at the higher rates, but even, in the mid game, if you want to hit that 234 mark, you got to get a 5.47 contribution. You're not going to get there unless you build at least one full Relic 8 team. I suppose you could also do it, and I put a note here, like if you had 6 Relic 5 teams contributing 1 million each, you could get your 5.5 to 6 million contribution for your guild. But imagining that you have 6 teams that can go in here that are all Relic, that means that you have Jawas and Tuskens that are also Relic 5. And for some people at the end game, that's true, but for a lot of us in the mid game, that is a stretch of the imagination to believe that we would have all of these teams at Relic 5. So for most mid game players, you're looking at a Relic 8 Jabba team to try to get that max contribution at 2.7 as your baseline. Then you can add on like a Mando team. There's enough Hut Cartel that once you build the Jabba team, you still have Hut Cartel left over. So it's a leftovers team, but maybe it could get a decent contribution if you figure out a good system with it. The Old Republic could maybe get something, and then Jawas and Tuskens again with some small contribution. So at the end of the day, if we add all of this stuff together, that puts us at the 5.5 million mark. But it's tough. It's a heck of a lot of work to get your account to the point where you can do the 234 box if you're a mid-game player. So let's recap. If you want the 130 level, your contribution requires you to have at least 2 full Relic 5 teams and some off teams to get there. If you want to be in a guild that gets better than the 130, your contribution has to start, my opinion, with a Relic 8 Jabba team getting a full contribution and more teams behind that pushing you up to around 5.5 to 6 million. That is really a lot. Not everybody in a guild participates, so if you want to get the 130, you have to have the top people in your guild up around that 5 million contribution. Again, realistically, we'd love to believe that if we want 130, that everybody will contribute their part and we'll finish off with 130 at the end. But imagining that the 50 players are all going to get their 2.7 million contribution or whatever it is that's needed, you have to be willing to contribute more than that, and the top players in your guild are going to have to be at a 5 million contribution rate to carry the rest of the people that are still working on it. If everyone in the entire guild were to build a Relic 8 Jabba team, that puts you at about 100 million contribution. So, yeah, The raid becomes doable at that point, but imagining that everybody in the guild is going to build a Relic 7 or Relic 8 Jabba team is, again, quite a feat. So that's a stretch, but honestly, without some Relic 7 teams that are hitting that 1.8 landmark, it's really going to be challenging for any guild to pass up that 130. So this is a commitment. What does it mean? In summary, I think a lot of mid-game guilds are just going to flip up their hands and say, we'll take the Sith raid. Because the gap between doing something in the Krayt raid and getting the right participation and the right rewards out of the Krayt raid is really a big step. Many people are going to be faced with the decision to build for the raid or not, and some people are going to be paralyzed by the idea that, well, if I build a Jabba team and get all this stuff up and running, but then CG will come out with a new raid and they'll, make that the new thing, and I'll be behind again. I've got news for you. That is how they monetize the game, and you can fully expect that there will be a cycle in which they run this raid, and then they'll monetize their new content by building a new raid and making that a requirement. But, the hope is that the Krayt raid would stay, that they won't just replace it with a new raid. But who knows how this is all going to work or how many times they're going to change their mind before that happens. So you have a choice to make. We all have a choice to make. And for free-to-play players, you're always behind. You're always catching up because you got to wait for things to be farmable. Then you got to farm them. Then you got to build them. And it puts us, 6 months behind the people who are willing to spend the money to get those characters early. At any rate, again, it's a choice. I don't know what the right choice is for you, but for sure, if you want to do the Krayt raid, you really have to make a commitment to your account. Building Jabba gives you the Hutt Cartel team. It gives you like a chance at doing an off-Hutt Cartel team as well as a Jabba team. You can build the Jabba team, and if you build like Embo and Cad Bane, you'll be able to have a second team. But I think for people who are serious about it, the commitment starts with Jabba, and then you have to fill in with other teams. The problem with all of this is that the personal track is not really that motivational. So if you build a really good team and you have a good personal contribution and your guild doesn't pull it off, then you're punished quite heavily. And honestly, then you have to go and change and get a different guild, because if you want to do the Krayt raid and you're committed to it, you have to find a guild that's going to do it. So my wish list. First of all, we can't complain. We can't ask them to give us more or give us something different. What we've got is already good. It looks different, but by my calculations, we're made whole. I do wish the shop was easier to use. It takes quite some time to scroll down to where those credits are. But again, that's a small, quality of life comfort thing. I do think they should allow the bounty hunter tag for the Krayt team. Honestly, a lot of bounty hunters are relevant and useful in the game. Bounty hunters, by definitions, do dangerous things for credits, so why wouldn't they come hunt a Krayt dragon? And to be honest, a lot of the bounty hunters are already Mandalorian or Hutt Cartel or something. So adding the bounty hunter tag really only opens up about one more team that people could have. But if you look at the way this lays out, that one more team is really the difference between a lot of mid-game guilds being able to succeed here. Because if you're you're at 97 million and you're pushing for 130, and everybody's got bounty hunters that they could bring in at that point. Well, let's say your bounty hunter teams all get, 0.75 on contribution or something like that. That pushes you up by another 25 million. 30 million for your total contribution, and it puts you where you need to be. So I really wish that they could consider opening up one more tag, just like the bounty hunter tag. Let one more team in there of characters that we want to relic, instead of stuff like Jawas that we really don't want to have to relic, and which apparently don't perform very well in the raid anyway. So if they're a dud, then let us have another team. Again, it's a wish list. And I think if I could give them any advice, if somebody from CG were to watch this and say, okay, I'll take a little bit of advice from Loquitur, I'm telling you guys, fix the personal track. make the personal track great. Make it so that you get token 3 at the first personal contribution that you can make. Giving token 3 at the very lowest level makes this raid desirable. It makes it so that people will want to build the teams for the raid. Right now, you're not monetizing the system if people go, well, fine, it's too hard, I'm not going to build these teams anyway. What you want to do is you want it to already, give people a taste of the good stuff at a very low level, give them that token 3 right away, and that motivates people to want to contribute. So instead of having people that want to be carried by a guild, you'll have people who say, I want better personal track rewards, so I'm willing to build the teams. And again, if we all succeed together as a guild, then we get better rewards. But I think the majority of the rewards should come from the personal track, and far, far less rewards should come from the guild box. Make the guild box kind of small, kind of unmotivating, and make it so that the personal contribution is really where it's at. It also prevents people from, doing horde accounts and stuff like that, where they just, right now you could put a level 1 account that's never done anything into the new system, launch the new Sith raid, and they just collect loot, and they can be a horde account. So for the Krayt raid, I think make the personal track a big deal, and avoid horde accounts and stuff like that being carried through. I don't know. For me, it's not a problem in the game, but I know people for whom they believe it's a problem. So I think this is again, it's just my opinion, but I would like to see the personal track more rewarding to again acknowledge and reward the players that are really trying to make their contribution. So it's a wish list of things that are nice to have, but at the end of the day, from my point of view, the controversy's over. Just doing the Sith raid already gives us as much or more than we ever had before, even at a high placement, high contribution rate. We're good. We're in good shape. We just need to learn how to spend that currency in the right way. Don't blow it all on gear. Save back a little to spend on credits, because you're going to need the credits. You won't get them out of the raids. So yeah, you got to buy some credits. It's not a big deal. All right. I'd love to hear your opinions. You heard my dissertation now. I'm sure people have had thoughts as we go along. So share them down below. Always happy to see what you guys got to say, and let's make a discussion out of this. And hey, if my math is wrong or there's something that I've missed, I'd be happy to hear from folks, and again, help the community. Thank you all for watching. Remember to hit that like button on the way out if you didn't hit it on the way in. And, of course, you can join us over on the Discord. We always have lively discussions on the Discord. The link is in the description of the holocron down below. Just click that, come over, and be part of the crew. Thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next holocron.